Josh Mansell here from MMA Today News, bringing you a third episode of Getting to Know MMA Today. Today I'm joined by senior editor of MMA Today. I'm joined by Max Freedman. How are you, man?
Josh, what's up, man? Absolute honor to be here. Can't wait to talk to you, and I really enjoyed your first couple pieces as part of this series, so looking forward to being the third episode.
Oh, thank you, man. It's great to have you. Great to have you so early on as well. So, first off, give me a little description about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm 26 years old. I live in Chicago, Illinois, the River North area, so that's right downtown for those who are unfamiliar. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, went to school in Nashville, and been a pretty big mixed martial arts fan since middle school. So it's just grown, and now I'm being a part of MMA Today for about 3 or 4 months now, writing, contributing, mostly matchmaking articles and UFC previews that I was gracefully given to by you, so I appreciate that. And now editing a few pieces as well. And so I've really enjoyed my time being a part of the team.
And do you have any kids, or are you married at all, or any of that business?
No, just girlfriend. That's about it. Have not been married or had any kids just yet. That might be something within the next 5 or 10 years, but right now it's just me.
I thought you were going to say something in the next couple of months. I thought we were getting exclusive here on Getting to Know MMA Today.
Not quite. Not quite.
How did you get into the sport?
Yeah, so, I was a huge professional wrestling fan growing up. And so guys like Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn, watching them in the WWF in the late 90s in the Attitude Era, I kind of was introduced to the sport by those guys. And then I believe it was in 2004, UFC 48, I saw a Ken Shamrock versus Chemo Leopoldo. I don't know if it was a rematch or no. It was their first meeting, I believe. And just from then on, I got absolutely hooked. My fanhood, I guess, just continued to grow and grow. And after college, working in the real world, I just became more and more addicted and have been following the UFC extremely closely ever since. And now I'm starting to pay attention a lot more to regional MMA and some of the other big organizations out there too.
Was there a specific fight or fighter that you watched and you were like, wow, I want some of this?
Yeah, you know what? So definitely that Ken Shamrock Chemo fight, but also watching George St. Pierre's first couple UFC fights. So when he fought Jay Haran, Carl Parisian, and then his UFC 50 match with Matt Hughes, those three I think come to mind. It's just a young, exciting, up and coming fighter that you could clearly see was really putting it together, and it was the beginning of a superstar. And no, I don't think anyone really expected him to become as big of a superstar as he has, and especially given the recent events that transpired, becoming the middleweight champion of the world after a 4-year hiatus. But he was probably the fighter that really locked me in as far as getting me addicted to the UFC.
Of course, yeah. And GSP, like you just mentioned, obviously winning the belt last weekend over Michael Bisping. What do we think about that?
That was unbelievable, man. I really thought that Bisping was going to be able to kind of fend off the GSP wrestling attack, or at least be able to scramble back to his feet pretty consistently. I did not foresee GSP landing that big haymaker on him, putting him down, and then dropping that nasty grounded pound, ultimately leading to that rear naked choke finish. That was unbelievable. And you know what? As a fight fan, you got to appreciate, knowing that anything can happen at any given time. We saw it that night with that fight. We saw it with Doug Rose, Namajunas knocking out Joanna and Jacek out of nowhere. Gotta love the sport for its spontaneity.
Of course. Right, I'm going to pause that there and just have a little listen. Actually, now you've got the big editor role over at MMA Today. How did you first get into writing, and did you expect it to get you an editing job at a site as getting big as what we are, kind of thing,
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I first started working, I was a traveling consultant on the road pretty much every week. And when you're traveling, you're always looking for new ways to entertain yourself on flights and hotels, things like that. And so I just kind of started some files on my computer, really just of like matches I'd like to see. I'd look over different rankings online and look over some up and coming fighters and prospects and start watching tape on them. Started kind of looking at the Ultimate Fighter and how those contestants had fared in the UFC, things like that. And really, that was just more of a hobby to me. And then I would, read constantly different articles on different MMA publications. And when I just on a whim saw a Twitter post about MMA Today looking for new contributors, and I actually had followed MMA Today pretty closely, as I had already followed guys like Nolan King and Sean that are online on Twitter, and Tone as well. And I was welcomed with open arms, and it's been great to be part of this team. Editing wise, no, I really hadn't done anything like that. I have a bunch of coursework in like the English language and English history and things like that, but that's kind of where the editing component also takes place. But it's been awesome to be an editor, getting to read how different other different contributors and different writers see the sport, how they break down different fights, get like a different point of view than what I'm used to. That's been a really fun part about being the editor too. And while I've also been able to still contribute the different articles that I like to write on a weekly basis.
Of course. And what are your favorite things to write?
Man, I absolutely love the matchmaking process, thinking about the different matchups in the division. And I like to keep it realistic too, given, who's competed at what time, where the card might be, things of that nature. I really do like to do the previews too that, you graciously handed over to me. That's something that I really hadn't done on a full scale before. I would, do the UFC Fantasy Pick'em on their website, but now that I do the previews, I really get to go into a little bit more detail and think about the fight from the stylistic standpoint of each of the fighters. So I've really enjoyed, breaking it down and then looking at how my predictions fared at the end of the card.
Yeah, man, UFC Pick'em, I remember that. That was back when it started. It was kind of quite big. I think it's kind of faded off now, but I remember I used to be in leagues with friends and family. It was great. You used to go, you used to like go head to head with all these people, and when you've got that sense of when you're winning a fight night, you run it. You think you're running the show.
Yeah, that's funny you said that because I agree. And so, like, one of the very first events they had I actually finished 5th overall out of however many 1,000 people. And
right.
The UFC, I got an email asking about my mailing address and email address to send me my prize for finishing in the top 5. And then, sure enough, like a month later, I got a little gift box from the UFC that included a T-shirt, a couple DVDs, and like some of the other cool swag too. But that was right when the Pick'em League first started. So this was probably 8 or 9 years ago.
That's really faded now though, because back then you used to get rewards and stuff like that. It was UFC rewards, wasn't it, where you could go on there and you could just use your points and spend them on things.
Yeah, I like that a lot too, because the more activities you would do, the more points you could rack up, and ultimately spend them on buying a pay-per-view.
Yeah, of course you could put them towards pay-per-views as well. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that was great fun. Back to the questions. Do you have any favorite fighters, or any memorable fights you can think of? I know you were speaking about the Kimbo one before.
Yeah, so favorite fighters, that's kind of a hard question for me to answer because I like to think of each individual weight class separately.
Yeah, me
but
too.
There are definitely guys that I like to watch fight. I've always been a fan of real crisp technical striking, guys that also bring an action-packed, high intense pace, and guys that can finish pretty much anywhere on standing or on the ground. So ironically enough, this weekend's winner, Dustin Poirier, is a guy I've always been really high on. Always enjoyed watching him fight. One guy who I really enjoyed watching fight in the UFC, who I think will be a future champion, is Mirsad Bektic in the featherweight division. Extremely high on both his striking and his really vicious ground and pound and strong wrestling and grappling game. Overall, I mean, I could give you 10 different names for each weight class that I enjoy watching. But I will always stay true to Tyron Woodley, the UFC welterweight champion, as he is also a St. Louis native, as am I. So I'm always going to root for him, despite some of the criticism that he might receive for not being as much of an action-packed fighter as he might be.
I never understood the hate. The man went out to defend his title, and defend his title he did on numerous occasions.
Yep. I couldn't agree more.
With his fight with his Damian Maia fight, it was clear it was going to go down like that. Maybe not exactly like that, but it was clear that Tyron would be too strong for him. I didn't see Damien taking him down at all, and I predicted that all over. I didn't predict the outcome. I didn't think it'd last that long, but I predicted that it would go that way.
I'm with you, Josh. I predicted that as well, and I thought for sure Tyron would be able to catch him with one of those big right hands before the end of the final bell. But we've seen what Damian Maia has done in that welterweight division. The guys he's taken down, the guys he's submitted, and to stuff 24 of 24 takedown attempts from Damian Maia,
Exactly.
That's impressive, and you can't deny that.
No, of course not. Do you have any experience in martial arts yourself?
Yeah, so I have been training jiu-jitsu for almost 4 years now. I'm a third-degree blue belt under Adam and Idris Redzovic, who are Gracie Baja affiliated black belts. I got my start back home in St. Louis under Kyle Watson, a guy who competed on The Ultimate Fighter season 12, I believe, as part of George St. Pierre's team. Went 1-1 in the UFC, was unfortunately on the wrong end of a highlight reel spinning back fist knockout from John McDessie. But nonetheless, a great jiu-jitsu coach and a great personality for me to get started with. And since being in Chicago, I've absolutely loved being a part of a jiu-jitsu school here. I have done a little bit of Muay Thai background, little Muay Thai classes, mostly from the technique standpoint, not any kind of sparring or competing wise. But I absolutely have loved getting into martial arts, and it's cool now to be a fight fan and watch the UFC, knowing a lot more about the technique involved both on the feet and on the ground.
For sure. I think when you're into a sport such as jiu-jitsu, such as karate, such as taekwondo, judo, whatever, I think you really look at the fight game a lot different. You have a really different sense to what's going on once you know you've trained those techniques, And
I agree completely.
That's what I love. I love that people can go out. When they really want to get into something, they'll go out and get into jiu-jitsu. They'll watch the fights and they can really analyze it on the spot and know what's happening at the moment,
Yeah, and also from a writing standpoint, I mean, being able to, whether it's a recap of a fight or a prediction or a preview, being able to talk about the technique and specifically which elements of that fighter's game they're able to excel inside the octagon, that definitely helps too.
Exactly, yeah, and it shows in the writing too. At MMAToday, we've got a lot of writers who can really break down, the fights. It's great, such as yourself too. It's a good thing for us to have over there at MMAToday. So, do you have a job outside of writing?
Yeah, so I am a software platform manager for a large risk management firm here in Chicago. So that's a full-time job. So most of my contributing comes either outside the office or kind of when I have downtime. But but as far as passion goes, that's mixed martial arts, and being a part of MMAToday has really helped me grow and find a really cool new hobby and passion outside the office that I think is valuable towards anyone's personal life.
Of course, yeah, and we're busy. These next couple of weeks are busy weeks. We've got a card a UFC card that is, every weekend now, all the way up until the week before the week of my birthday. Nightmare. My birthday, 23rd of December.
Your December birthday, Josh?
I'm a 23rd of December birthday.
Oh, okay. I'm the 3rd, so.
Oh, the
good
3rd.
Man.
Not even far away. But yeah, we've got a card every weekend, and obviously you'll be a little bit more busy. You've got to check through all those articles to make sure we've got good English. But yeah, it's not easy. We've got busy weeks.
It's a pleasure, man. Yeah, and then you know what? I was looking at 2018 too, and starting in January through from January 14th, UFC first of all makes its debut in St. Louis, Missouri, my hometown. Cannot wait for that card, by the way. But from January through, I think the first or second weekend in March, there is a card, I believe, every single weekend. And that's for the UFC, I mean.
Of course, man. And last question now. I obviously did this segment with Drake Riggs the other day. And did you see the news on Michael Bisping obviously taking the UFC Shanghai fight with Kelvin Gastelum? What do we think of that?
Man, that is the last name I would have predicted after the beating he took from George St. Pierre. I did not think that Bisping, I mean, as tough as he is, would be able to go on however many 2 weeks notice and less than a month after his first fight. That's going to be quite a fight. And he'll definitely come in shape. I mean, we saw him knock out Luke Rockhold on 10 days notice back at UFC 199 last June. But Kelvin Gastelum, completely different style of fighter than St. Pierre was, and that's going to be an interesting fight. I got to favor Gastelum early, just thinking that Bisping's coming in on short notice, going across the world to take on a young, athletic, hungry competitor like Kelvin Gastelum. How about you, Josh? What's your take on that fight?
My take on that fight is Michael Bisping's a fucking warrior. To take 2 main events in 3 weeks,
doubt about it.
That's crazy. And he said, I think it was with Flo, he said that he was pissed off mentally and just wanted to get back in there and punch somebody. What a what a fight! I was lucky enough to see Bisping at 204 in Manchester against Dan Henderson, and wow, the man comes to fight.
Yeah.
I would have preferred to see him maybe not take on Kelvin, as good as it is to see him get back in there as soon as possible. I would prefer to see him take on Romero, obviously.
Yeah, and I think you could have, built a lot of that fight, given all the words and exchanges they've had. Could have hyped it up a little bit, especially, knowing how well Bisping handles those media tours and those press conferences and those phone calls. I think he could have definitely had a field day making fun of Yoel Romero for 8 weeks before their fight.
Yeah, that could have sold. And it would have been a massive card too.
Now, Josh, the other fight I know we started to talk about last time but didn't get to was Jimmy Rivera with that open slot on UFC 219 card. Given the bantamweights that were victorious this weekend and also calling for that fight, do you see one of those guys, whether it's Rafael Assunção or Marlon Moraes, getting that fight with Jimmy Rivera at UFC 219?
Man, we had a crazy weekend of fights once again. UFC Norfolk was a great card. Obviously, the bantamweights were there to take over once again. I'm still happy with the Jimmy Rivera, Aljamain Sterling, but then you saw who jumped on the mic? Wasn't it Assunção?
Moraes jumped on the mic and called for it, and I believe Assunção was asked about it in his backstage interview and said he would be more than happy to take that fight.
Moraes jumped on the mic and he spoke a lot. Whether that got him the fight, I don't know. Aljamain Sterling put on his Twitter something like, "It looks like my fight has just been robbed," with a load of smiley faces. I don't know. I'd still like to see Aljamain Sterling there. Moraes, he didn't cut it for me. It wasn't a smooth victory.
Yeah, no, I think Moraes, you could have argued that John Dodson won that fight.
Yeah.
I think if you're building a case for somebody to take on Jimmy Rivera in that slot, I would give it to Rafael Assunção. I mean, his last 2 wins are over Aljamain Sterling and Marlon Moraes. And then with that, pretty impressive third-round knockout over Matthew Lopez. Granted, Lopez a little bit further down in the rankings than any of those 3 names we just mentioned. He probably has the strongest case for that Rivera fight. But Aljamain Sterling, given the Twitter exchanges and the beef between him and Rivera in the past, that's more than a capable matchup, and I think would be an excellent addition to that UFC 219 card on December 30th.
I think I'd have to go back and look at how Assunção did on the weekend. It was a great. It would have to be between Assunção and Aljamain then. But after that case you've made there, that is a strong case to put Jimmy Rivera and Thingy together and Assunção. So I'd be happy with either, to be honest with you. Obviously, Aljamain 14-2. I can't remember what Assunção is now, but with the case you've just made, that's a strong one.
Either way, as long as Jimmy Rivera is not getting pulled, I love to watch him fight. And Team Tiger Schulman's, talk about a team that's really emerged as one of the top camps in that Northeast region. Guys like Jimmy Rivera and Shane Burgos just putting on display after display inside the UFC's octagon.
And the last little thing I wanted to speak to you about was obviously you saw Bellator Dublin, Conor McGregor. What was that? He jumped the fence. Exactly. So he jumped the fence to celebrate with his teammate. His teammate got the win, obviously. He jumped the fence. Goddard came over the ref. Not entirely sure what he said to him. According to Connor, he told him that the fight wasn't over, and it kicked off. Did you see that?
Yeah, no, I did. I saw the clip, and man, that was entertaining as always. Say what you want about Conor McGregor, but one thing I've noticed, and I think the MMA community has noticed, is he is truly loyal to his teammates. Whether it's Artem Lobov competing on The Ultimate Fighter, or Charlie Ward, a guy who's had two really unfortunate UFC outings to come back and get a win in his Bellator debut. Conor has shown that he is incredibly supportive of those SPG Ireland teammates. And, just it shows with the emotion he displays when they get the job done inside the cage. So, yeah, maybe he went a little bit overboard jumping in the cage just because he is a superstar, doesn't give him the right, as any other person in the arena. But I'm not really sure what to think as far as the exchange with Mark Goddard. Goddard, a very highly respected, one of the most veteran referees in the game. I think he has a right to be angry at McGregor, but at the same time, you know what? It was in Ireland. Just the fight was over. It's got to let it go. If you're gonna something's gonna happen, then maybe fine McGregor for jumping in the cage, or fine Charlie Ward for having a cornerman jump in the cage. But I don't think anything of it, will come of it. I think it's just kind of a one-off incident.
Was Conor a cornerman, or was he there to was he a spectator only?
No, I think that's the reason, is he was a spectator. He was not in the corner. Had it been a cornerman jumping in early before, they could walk around the cage to get to the door, then that's another story. But I believe he was just spectating and supporting his teammate.
Max, that's all I've got for you, man. I'm going to hope this recording hasn't messed up this time. You can check out Max Freedman on his Twitter, @trademark MMA. He's a great follow, obviously. Editor for MMAToday, so he does all the work that no one really sees. He's the background guy, aren't you, Max?
Hey, I'd like to think it's a team effort, Josh. I really appreciate all the support from everyone on the team, and I appreciate the plug there. And I hope everyone continues to check out at MMAToday on a regular basis and following us on Twitter and all the social media as well.
Max, it's been fun, man.
It's been a pleasure, Josh. I really enjoyed it. Sounds great. Can't wait.
Cool. See you later, man. Make sure you follow make sure you hit the subscribe button, on the MMAToday page, and hit the like button, comment, give us all that good stuff. I'll speak to you soon, Max.
Have a nice one, Josh.
Cheers, man.